Born on October 13, 1936, Katie moved into a large estate called Esmenshof in the Austrian province of Burgenland bordering Hungary. Her father was an agronomist who leased land from the Hilgensues Abbey and built a farm there, while her mother reluctantly moved to the countryside. She reluctantly moved due to them being from a rich, affluent family, but moved anyway because of her love for her husband and kids. But after that, the Anschluss began. After the Anschluss in March 1938, the taking over of Austria by Nazi Germany, Katie's father was arrested by the German secret police. Her father was bailed out of prison by his wife, who, from her side of the family, is wealthy. Katie's father soon fled the country and took shelter in Hungary, an ally of Germany. In March of 1944, Germany seized Hungary and Katie Altenberg's family was taken to a prison in Budapest. After an announcement that was made in favor of the prisoners, Katie and Adolf were sent to their aunt. However, they were not able to make it. They were detained and taken away. Katie's father was able to find her and her brother. After being taken to their aunts briefly, they were forced to the Budapest ghetto. The Soviets soon liberated their ghetto in early 1945. Katie, Adi, their father, and their aunt immediately sent out for their mother, who thought it was in a labor camp. Their father found her in a terrible physical condition and brought her home. Katie found out that many of her extended family did not survive the Holocaust, including her grandfather. Katie later immigrated to the United States with her family in November 1948. She had 2 children, which were named Karen and Stephen Altenberg, and was a volunteer at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum before dying of leukemia in the middle of March 2022. And now for some symbols that we think fit the tragedy of Katie Altenberg.
The Vienna flag. This red and white flag is the symbol of the nation of Vienna, Austria. This flag represents Katie Altenberg's early life and is a symbol of her heritage. She was born in Vienna on October 13, 1936, and was not taken from there until March 12, 1938, the date of the Anschluss. The Anschluss is the taking over of Austria by Nazi Germany, which was coordinated and announced by Adolf Hitler. While she did not spend the greater part of her life there, Vienna was still an important part in Katie Altenberg's life, as it was where she was born and where she was quickly taken into custody of the Nazis first. While to another person, this farm may be looked at with no recognition, to another person, no connections would be made. However, to Katie Altenberg, she would recognize a farm in the countryside as where her father built his farm. Her father, who was an integral part of Katie's life, was an agronomist. Her father leased land from the Hilgenkreuze Abbey, and he and her mom, who was also a very important part of Katie's life. The farm in the countryside is important to Katie's life/upbringing.
Agronometry. Katie's father was an agronomist. An agronomist is an expert in the science of soil management and crop production, which would require her father to spend a lot of time near the farms. This would be why he decided to move his family into a farmhouse, so he could focus more on his job and so he could be around a very similar environment.
Money. This picture, depicting a large amount of money and gold, represents an important part of Katie Altenberg's life, her family. While she struggled during her torturous Holocaust experiences, that isn't to say she wasn't somewhat fortunate. Katie Altenberg's mother's side of the family is wealthy. This wealth allowed the Altenbergs to get to places they probably would not have been able to reach if they did not have the money. After the Anschluss, Katie's father was taken away by the Gestapo, the German secret police, and placed into a prison. If Katie's mother did not possess as much money as she did, the Altenbergs would most likely have been split up and all died off. However, Katie's mother bailed her father out of prison with her money, and the family was temporarily saved, fleeing to Hungary.
Mansion. Although this is nowhere near to the houses of the wealthy in 1939, this would be the type of lifestyle that Katie's mother lived in until she met her father. It's not clear, however, where her mother grew up, we just know how she grew up. Rich. She lived in this type of house, living a very privileged lifestyle, and why she would reluctantly move to the countryside with Katie's father, only doing so out of love for her spouse and children. Anschluss. This photograph is representing an accurate depiction of a Nazi event that took place in Austria called Anschluss. Anschluss was a horrible event that was meant to represent Austria siding with Germany and the beginning of the hunt for Jews. And sure enough, shortly after this, Katie's father would be arrested by the Gestapo. Prisoner. Although Katie's father is not in this particular photograph, this would be where Katie's father would be taken. He would have been forced to wear this uniform and stand side by side with his fellow Jews, before Katie's mother's great perseverance and a lot of money succeeded in getting him released from prison. Katie's father thought that was the worst experience for him at the time, but he would have no idea what was in store for him in the future.
The Gestapo. This image displays the German secret police. This group, also known as the Gestapo, operated during the Holocaust similar to how cops act to this day. They arrested people. The Gestapo arrested Katie Altenberg's father in Vienna, which was the first of many large events in Katie's life. The Gestapo arresting Katie's father is what set into motion her entire Holocaust experience, from bailing her father from prison to fleeing to Hungary and to being forced into a ghetto twice.
Hungary village. After Katie's mother liberated Katie's father from the Austrian prison, Katie's father had to leave the country immediately. He fled across the border into the neighboring Hungary in a hay wagon. In a short time later, the family joined him on an uncle's estate in Hungary, but they wouldn't stay for long, for shortly after that, Katie's family would be sent to Budapest concentration camp, where hell was waiting for them.
A Budapest ghetto. Although Katie and her family fled to Hungary for sanctuary, they were met with quite the opposite. In March of 1944, Germany overtook Hungary and the Altenbergs were put away in a ghetto located in Budapest. Katie and her brother, Adi, were sent away by their parents from the Budapest ghetto to be taken in by their aunt so they could be safe from the Holocaust. However, they were forced once again into a Budapest ghetto. Katie spent most of her Holocaust experience in a ghetto, so this image directly relates and represents her and what she went through, until 1945 when they were liberated.
Budapest concentration camp. This would be where again Katie's family would be separated, but this time it's both of her parents splitting from her children, leaving Katie and her brother Adolf all by themselves. While they did get sent to their aunts for a little bit by their father, who found them, they were then forced to go back to the Budapest concentration camp along with their father and aunt.
The Soviets. After Katie spent her Holocaust experience in a ghetto in Budapest in 1945, members of the ghetto were liberated and saved by that of the Soviets. This image displays exactly what happened in Katie's life. Russian soldiers/Soviets freeing prisoners from the clutches of Hitler and ending their Holocaust experience. The Soviets are important to Katie's life because they are the ones who saved her from certain death. If the Soviets were not there to liberate her ghetto, she never would have been able to live a full life and die peacefully. Instead, she most likely would have been dehumanized and died violently or horrifically. The physical condition of the prisoners. This picture displays an expression of how prisoners were found after the Holocaust. After liberation, they were not immediately in perfect condition. Apart from lots of prisoners being dehumanized, they were also starved. These horrific physical conditions in which prisoners were found were just how Katie's mother was found. After the Soviets liberated their Budapest ghetto in 1945, Katie was apart from her mother. When Katie's father finally found her mother, she was in horrible physical condition due to the Holocaust. Prisoners were starved, beaten, and deprived of normal treatment as a human being. This image directly relates to Katie's life because of the similarities between the physique of the liberated prisoners in the image and the physique of her mother that she was found in.
Katie and Adi. The Soviets liberated the Budapest ghetto in early 1945. Katie and her family returned to her aunt's apartment, where her father would leave to go search for their mother. This would be a photo of Katie and her brother after they were liberated, hence the short haircuts. After her father found her mother and cured her, they went to the United States to start the new life that was ahead of them.
The United States flag. This image, depicting a diverse group of people standing below a flagpole as the flag of the United States of America is lifted into the air, is a clear symbol of Katie Altenberg, specifically her later life after her Holocaust experience. In 1948, after Katie and her family had already been put through the Holocaust, she and her family moved to the U.S. The U.S. is a very important part of Katie's life, not only because that is where she started a family, but also where she passed away in March of 2022.
The Holocaust Museum. The Holocaust Museum would be where Katie would spend the rest of her life working at. She would tell stories of what happened there and some of her own experiences, and this is where she continued to work until her untimely death due to leukemia in March 2022. To top it all off for you, we introduce a quick poem on the memories of Katie Altenberg. This is my worn mind. As the world around me dissipates and my eyesight wanes away, I find myself standing idle in a field, just like it was yesterday. The scalding sun washes over me, and I feel my stomach turn, for I was back in time, and for once, I was the cause of my own burns. I glanced at my wrists, no sign of the tattoo starred, but I was grateful for my worn mind, burying me in thoughts afar. Back in my innocence, I was liberated from the truth. Back at the farm, in the body of my youth. No sign of the traitors that we once called friends, yet I knew that this fantasy was only pretend. However, even though the field was fake, I felt the faint brush of plants against my legs. I felt the cool air battering against my body. I heard the sounds of the animals. I felt the joy of the animals radiating my soul. But as my sight returned, I woke. Realization hit me. The brush of the plants was the Nazi's whip. The cool, battering air was the truncheon beating me, and the sounds of the animals was the cries of infants as they were thrown into the fires. My worn mind failed me from distracting me from the truth. The truth was, I was in a concentration camp in Budapest in 1944, and even the strangest minds could distract the person from these horrors.